What if the moment that changed everything came from a single mistake, a single breath, a single glance you were never meant to see? The first rain of the season had passed through Dry Creek Valley like a blessing and a warning. The air tasted of clean dust and bruised sage. The land looked washed but not healed. Eli Turner felt the same way inside. 32 years old and worn down by hard roads, he rode his buckskin gelding, Ran, down the slope into the valley. The sunset painted the clouds in bruised purple, orange, and pink. The moisture on the brush made the whole place shimmer like glass, a lonely kind of beauty that reminded him how empty his life had become. He had come from the silver mines in the north, riding 300 miles, with nothing but his horse, his saddle, and the ghosts of the past he couldn't shake. The mines had given him a cough, a handful of scars, and memories of a cave-in that still woke him at night. He had run from it all, hoping the desert winds would strip the weight from his shoulders. Ahead of him sat a ranch tucked neatly into the curve of the valley. A long timber house with a stone chimney, a tall barn, corrals, and outbuildings, all laid out tidy and proud. Smoke curled from the chimney. Warmth lived there. A life rooted deep, something Eli hadn't had in a long time. He nudged, ran forward. A dog barked as he neared the front porch. A broad man stepped into the doorway, holding a rifle as naturally as if it were part of him. Eli slowed, raised his hands on the reins, and stopped far enough to show he meant no trouble. "Evening," Eli called, his voice rough from days of silence. "Looking for a bed for the night, maybe work if there's any." "We ain't a hotel," the man answered, his voice a low, stone-hard grumble. "And we don't take drifters." Eli climbed down from his saddle. He stood calm and open, letting the man judge him. "Name's Eli Turner. I can mend fences, handle horses, run cattle. I work hard. I don't ask for more than my wage." The rancher, Frank Holt, walked a slow circle around him. His dog growled low from the shadows. Frank's eyes missed nothing. He saw the wear in Eli's gear, the strength in his horse, and the quiet steadiness in the man who stood before him. Before Frank could speak, the front door opened. A young woman stood there with a dish towel in her hands. She had long, dark hair pulled back from a face full of quiet strength. Her eyes were large, watchful, seeing right through him. She was not delicate like the women in magazines. She was real, grounded, built from the land itself. Eli didn't know her name, but the sight of her hit him like cool water after a long drought. "Ada, get back inside," Frank ordered. She didn't flinch. For a heartbeat, she met Eli's gaze, a still, curious moment, before she turned away and closed the door. Frank's jaw tightened. "My daughter's got no business with strangers." "Yes, sir," Eli said. The silence stretched between them. At last, Frank let out a slow breath. "The bunkhouse is out back. There's an empty cot. Eat with the hands. I'll pay you 30 a month and found. You start sunrise. Cause one bit of trouble." His eyes hardened. "Or look at my daughter the wrong way and you're gone before your next breath. Understand?" "I do," Eli said. He meant it. That night he settled Ran in the barn, brushed him down, and then found his cot in the bunkhouse. The other hands, an old-timer called Pop, and a narrow-shouldered kid named Jimmy, gave him short nods and left him to himself. No one asked about his past. No one offered their own. That was the way of ranch life. Later, lying back on the lumpy cot, Eli watched the single upstairs light glowing in the main house. He imagined the young woman, Ada, moving about her room. He wondered what she dreamed of, living under her father's heavy watch. She seemed like a woman made for open skies, but fenced in too tight. He closed his eyes to the sound of the cattle lowing across the valley and the wind whispering through cottonwoods. For the first time in months, the ghosts in his head grew quiet. He wasn't healed. But he was here, working land that didn't belong to chaos, breathing air that smelled of rain and sage. And for now, that was enough. What if the one moment you tried hardest to hide became the very moment that changed two lives forever? The days on the Holt Ranch settled into a steady rhythm that suited Eli. He rose before dawn, worked hard, kept quiet, and asked for nothing. His hands grew familiar with the fences, the cattle, the rawhide ropes, and the rugged land. He worked like a man, trying to stay ahead of the ghosts trailing him. Ada Holt watched him from a distance. She saw the calm patience he used on stubborn horses, the care he gave the calves, the way he repaired things no one asked him to fix, simply because he noticed they needed fixing. He spoke little, especially around her, always saying Miss Holt, with a respectful nod. A wall stood between them, built by her father's orders, held by Eli's honor. Yet something warm flickered every time their eyes met. Their first real words came by the creek. She rode up as he rebuilt a washed-out bank with stones from the water. He looked up at her with those clear, gray eyes. "My father didn't ask you to fix that," she said. "No, ma'am, but come spring runoff, this whole stand of cottonwoods will be gone." Her lips curved. "You notice things. A man alone learns to." He didn't say more. He didn't have to. She felt the truth in it. Weeks passed. Their stolen conversations grew in number, each one a small stone in a quiet bridge forming between them. Her father sensed something shifting, and his rules tightened like a noose. He kept Ada close. He sent Eli to far corners of the property. But the land is wide, and hearts find ways to speak even when mouths don't. Then came the heat. A blistering, breathless wave of summer that pressed down on Dry Creek Valley until even the cattle hid in the shade. On one punishing afternoon, Silas sent Eli to mend a long stretch of barbed wire, miles from the house. By the time he finished, sweat soaked his shirt, dust coated his skin, and his muscles burned. All he could think of was water, not a sip, immersion. A cold plunge that washed away every ache, every memory. Behind the barn was a spring-fed pond, hidden deep beneath willows and cottonwoods. It stayed cool even in the fiercest heat. No one used it. No one went there at this hour. He would be alone. Eli ran to the barn, grabbed a rough bar of soap from his saddlebag, and walked toward the trees. The shadows swallowed him as he slipped between the green branches. The pond lay still and dark, sparkling under strands of sunlight that flickered through the canopy. He peeled off his filthy clothes and stepped in. The shock of cold stole his breath. Then, slowly, he lowered himself deeper until he was chest-high, then shoulder-high, his face tipped toward the sky. The water numbed the day's pain. For the first time in weeks, he felt at peace, suspended in a quiet world far from judgment, far from suspicion, far from everything except the sound of his own breathing. He closed his eyes. But he wasn't alone. Ada had been searching for her colt, Morning Star, who escaped his corral again. His tracks led her into the cottonwoods. She pushed through a curtain of willow leaves and froze. Eli stood in the water, sunlight striping his scarred back, the muscles in his shoulders moving with each slow breath. He looked strong, but there was a gentleness in the way he held himself, a weariness etched into the lines of his body. He looked human, real, unarmored. Her heart slammed in her chest. She knew she shouldn't look, but she couldn't move. She was a rancher's daughter, raised around men, horses, and hard work. But she had never seen a man like this, not stripped down to bone and truth, not stripped down to wounds and strength. She started to back away and stepped on a twig. Crack! Eli's eyes snapped open. He didn't jerk or panic. He simply turned his head, their eyes locked across the still water. Ada felt heat rush to her face. She wanted to run, to disappear, to erase the moment, but she couldn't. Something held her still, rooted to the earth. Eli looked at her for a long breath, not angry, not embarrassed, just honest. Then the corner of his mouth lifted, the smallest smile, a tired, warm, almost teasing smile that changed the whole world in a heartbeat. "If you're going to watch, miss." His voice was low, gentle, almost amused. "Might as well tell me your name." Her breath caught, her heart dropped. He didn't know her name. After all their moments, their glances, their careful distance, he had held her at arm's length out of respect. He had never asked. She had never offered. Her throat tightened. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't believe what she was feeling. A strangled sound escaped her, and she fled, bolting through the trees, branches whipping behind her, her pulse racing faster than her legs could carry her. She didn't stop running until she reached the ranch yard and found Morningstar calmly chewing her mother's rose bush. Her hands trembled. Her heart wouldn't settle. Her mind replayed every second. The water, the scars, the quiet smile, the sound of his voice asking for her name. That night she lay awake staring at the ceiling, unable to silence the storm inside her. Out in the bunkhouse, Eli lay on his cot, rain beginning to tap against the roof. He remembered her wide eyes, her flushed cheeks, her shock. Against every dark weight he carried, a laugh, small and rusty, escaped him. For a moment, he wasn't a man running from ghosts. He was just a man who had been seen by the rancher's daughter, and for the first time in a long time, the darkness inside him felt lighter. What if the truth you spent your whole life running from found you on the one day you finally found someone worth staying for? After the moment at the pond, nothing was the same. Ada tried to pretend life went on normally, but every time she looked at Eli, she remembered sunlight on his skin and the soft smile he had given her. And every time Eli saw her, something warm and dangerous stirred in his chest. 2 days later, she told him her name. He was working Morningstar in the corral when she walked up, her heart pounding. He stopped, coiling his rope, waiting. "It's Ada," she said quietly. A flicker, soft, grateful, touched his eyes. He repeated her name slowly, like committing it to memory. "Thank you." The bridge between them grew stronger with every stolen moment. Tiny conversations near the fence line. A few quiet words when he came to the well. A shared look across the yard. But Frank Holt saw it all. The father who held his daughter too tightly felt her slipping away toward a drifter with secrets in his eyes. Suspicion turned into anger, anger into fear, fear into judgment, and then into ruin. One afternoon, he returned from Dry Creek with news that hollowed him out. Rumors of the Tuscarora mine and a name tied to a foreman's death, Eli Turner. Frank didn't ask questions. He didn't want answers. He only saw danger. He changed work schedules. He kept Ada by his side. He watched Eli like he was a fire ready to burn his house down. Ada felt the change and knew the cause, but Eli would not explain. He simply slipped further into silence, carrying his guilt like a stone. Then came the rain. A heavy storm rolled over Dry Creek Valley. Winds howled. Water flooded the yard. The sky cracked with lightning. And in that fierce weather, Frank found Eli alone in the barn. "When the mud dries," Frank said coldly, "so do you. You leave this ranch." It was not anger in Eli's eyes. It was acceptance. He'd felt this before, people turning away, judgment without truth. He barely nodded. "Yes, sir." The days that followed were painful quiet. She knew he was leaving. He knew she knew. Every glance between them carried the weight of goodbye. Then 3 strangers rode into Dry Creek. Men from the mines. Men with hard eyes. Men hunting someone. They found Frank first and told him their story. A lying story dripping with poison, claiming Eli was the one responsible for the foreman's death. It was enough, more than enough to spark Frank's fury. He rode home like a man possessed. "Turner!" he shouted across the yard. "Get off my land now!" Ada ran from the porch, terrified. "Father, no! Please listen!" But Frank would not listen. He would not hear truth. He only saw the ghost of danger. Eli tried to speak. "I didn't kill anyone." His voice was steady, not begging, not angry, only truthful. He looked at Ada when he said it, but Frank wouldn't bend. "Silas, Jimmy, escort him off my property." Ada broke. "Father, stop! You can't send him away." "This isn't right." Quote, "It's to protect you," Frank shouted. "Go inside before I drag you there myself." Quote. Her breath stopped. Her heart tore. Eli met her eyes one last time, his look full of sorrow and apology. Then he turned and walked away. She felt something inside her collapse. A quiet world shattered. Silas and Jimmy rode with Eli to the edge of the Holt ranch as the storm thickened. They left him near the cottonwoods and turned back toward home. Rain hammered the earth. Thunder shook the sky. Eli rode alone into the grove, and then the past came for him. Duke Madden stepped out from the trees, shotgun in hand, a cruel grin across his face. "Well now, Turner," he said, "looks like you're finally alone." Two more men stepped out behind him, pistols drawn. A perfect trap. Lightning split the sky. Gunfire exploded. The storm became a battlefield. Eli dove from his horse, firing into the darkness. One of Duke's men fell, then the other. A shotgun blast ripped through Eli's shoulder. Blood poured down his side. He stumbled toward the pond, fighting through the pain, trying to reach cover as the storm drowned the world in rain. Back at the ranch, Ada's heart twisted with every thunderclap. Then Jimmy burst into the house. "Mr. Holt! Shots! We heard gunfire down by the cottonwoods!" Ada didn't think, didn't breathe. She ran out of the house. Into the rain. Straight to the stables. Her father shouted her name, but she didn't stop. She saddled her mare with shaking hands and galloped into the storm. "Please be alive," she whispered into the wind. "Please." She found Rand standing alone on the road, reins tangled. Her heart nearly stopped. She plunged into the trees. "Eli!" she cried, her voice ripped apart by the thunder. "Eli!" Then she saw him, slumped against a cottonwood by the pond, blood running down his arm, rain washing pink water around him. Her legs almost gave out. She ran to him and fell to her knees in the mud. "Eli!" she whispered, her hand shaking as she touched his face. "Eli, please." He opened his eyes, pain clouded, breath shallow. "Ada," he rasped, "you shouldn't be here." She pulled him into her arms, rain mixing with her tears. "I'm not leaving you," she said. "Not again." Silas found them minutes later and helped her get Eli back to the ranch. Frank stood frozen in the yard, watching his daughter ride in, holding the man he had cast out. His world collapsed. Eli hovered between life and death for 2 days. Ada stayed beside him, refusing sleep, refusing fear. She fed him water, wiped his brow, whispered stories to keep him anchored. Then the sheriff arrived with the truth. Duke Madden confessed everything. The theft at the mines, the collapse they had caused, the foreman they killed, and how Eli had run back into the collapsing timbers trying to save another man. Eli Turner wasn't a killer. He was a hero. Frank Holt sat alone in his study as the truth crushed him. He had wronged a good man. He had nearly destroyed him. And his daughter had been the one brave enough to see what he refused to see. He went to Eli's room. "I owe you her life," he whispered, voice breaking. "And an apology I can never pay back." Quote, "Eli only said you love your daughter. That's all the reason you had." Forgiveness passed between them, painful, real, human. But the ranch was no longer a place of peace for Eli or Ada. Too much had happened. Too much had been torn open. When the first autumn breeze arrived, they made their choice. They rode out together before sunrise, Ada on her mother's saddle and Eli on Rand. Frank stood on the porch, one hand on the post, watching the shape of his daughter fade into mist. He didn't call after her. He didn't forbid her. He let her go with the kind of love that hurts and heals at the same time. At the top of the ridge, sunlight broke over the mountains. Eli turned to her with a soft smile, the same smile she first saw at the pond. "I reckon the West's still wild enough for us, Ada." She reached out, took his hand and squeezed. "Then let's see what waits beyond the dust." And together they rode into the wide, open world.